a tale that will linger in your heart. Have you ever crossed paths with someone who reshaped your life in ways you couldn't have imagined? A fleeting act of compassion, an unexpected meeting, or a choice made amid doubt. Sometimes, these are the moments that shape who we are. This is the story of Ethan, a man who wandered through life, never truly finding his place, and Claire, a woman whose wealth couldn't buy the one thing she yearned for most. When their paths converged, everything transformed. A lost child, a love that defied all odds, a path of sacrifice, redemption, and a joy that no fortune could ever purchase. As you embark on their journey, brace yourself to feel a spectrum of emotions, elation, sorrow, and the radiant warmth of a love that changes lives. If you believe in fresh starts, in love that arrives unannounced, and in stories that echo long after their final words, this is for you. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button to ensure you never miss a story like this. Now, get comfortable, and let's immerse ourselves in a tale of love, loss, and the beauty of finding a home where you least expect it. The winter night had draped itself over the small town, its streets shimmering with a delicate layer of frost. In a modest, dimly lit garage on the town's edge, Ethan Marshall wiped oil from his hands with a worn cloth. The day had been grueling, tire rotations, engine checks, and the constant grind of keeping his small shop running. He sighed, his breath clouding in the chilly air, and switched off the flickering light above his workbench. Stepping outside to lock the door, a sharp gust of wind stung his face, prompting him to pull his coat tighter around his sturdy frame. The night's quiet was misleading. The faint hum of a distant car broke the stillness now and then, but something else caught Ethan's ear, a soft rustle from the alley beside his garage. He froze, listening closely, his senses heightened. A quiet sob followed, barely audible. Ethan's brow furrowed. He scanned the shadowy surroundings before cautiously moving toward the sound, his boots crunching on the gravel. As he rounded the corner, the sight stopped his breath. A small figure crouched against the building's wall, half hidden in the darkness. A young girl, no more than 6 or 7, sat curled up in a thin pink jacket, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her golden hair was matted, her cheeks flushed from the cold, and her wide blue eyes, glistening with unshed tears, held a mix of fear and fragility. "Hey, little one," Ethan said softly, lowering himself to her level to seem less imposing. His voice, naturally deep, carried a gentle warmth. "What are you doing out here by yourself?" The girl flinched slightly, but didn't retreat. She watched him, cautious yet desperate, her lips quivering as she clung to herself. Ethan's heart clenched. No child should be out in this cold, alone. He glanced around, hoping to spot a worried parent searching for her, but the streets were deserted, swept only by the icy wind. "Are you lost?" he asked, keeping his tone steady and kind. She gave a slow, hesitant nod. Ethan exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. Kids weren't his forte, but he recognized fear when he saw it, and this girl was terrified. "Okay," he said gently, nodding back. "Let's get you inside where it's warm. We'll sort this out together." She hesitated, her eyes searching his face, but exhaustion seemed to win. She extended a tiny, freezing hand. Ethan took it carefully in his rough, calloused palm and led her into the garage. The heater's warmth enveloped them as he flicked it on. He guided her to an old couch in the corner, where she sank into the worn cushions, still trembling. Grabbing a thick blanket, he draped it over her small frame. "Feel a bit better?" he asked, crouching before her again. She nodded faintly, pulling the blanket closer. "Good," Ethan said, pulling up a chair. "What's your name, sweetheart?" After a pause, she whispered, "Sophie." "That's a beautiful name." He replied with a small smile. I'm Ethan. Nice to meet you, Sophie. She didn't answer, her gaze dropping to her lap. Ethan noticed her hands still shaking beneath the blanket. He didn't push her, sensing she needed time to feel secure. Instead, he rummaged through a cabinet, finding an unopened bottle of apple juice he kept for young customers. Handing it to her, he said, "Drink this. It'll warm you up a little." Sophie took a tentative sip, her fingers struggling to hold the bottle steady. Ethan watched her closely. "Do you know where you live?" he asked gently. She hesitated, then shook her head. Ethan sighed. A lost child in the freezing night with no clue how to get home wasn't good. He reached for his phone, considering the police, but paused. Sophie's wide, frightened eyes tracked his every move, as if wary of his next action. Instead of calling, he set the phone down. "We'll figure this out tomorrow, okay? You can stay here tonight where it's safe." Relief flickered in her expression, subtle but present. She curled up under the blanket, exhaustion overtaking her. Within minutes, she was asleep. Ethan sat there, watching over her, his mind racing. Who was she? Where were her parents? Why did she seem so scared? His fingers traced the faded scars on his hands, remnants of a past he rarely revisited. He knew what it was like to feel lost, abandoned, and the kind of fear that lingered long after the cold faded. Leaning back in his chair, rubbing his stubbled jaw, one thing was certain. This night was far from over, and his life was about to shift in ways he never could have foreseen. Ethan stirred before dawn, the garage heater's steady hum filling the quiet. Stretching his stiff muscles, he glanced at the couch. Sophie was still there, curled tightly beneath the blanket, her golden hair spilling over the fabric. For a moment, he watched her, wondering what had brought a child like her to the streets alone. As if sensing his gaze, Sophie woke, her blue eyes blinking at the unfamiliar surroundings. Spotting Ethan, she tensed, clutching the blanket. "Morning, kid," he said softly. "Sleep all right?" She nodded slowly after a pause. "Hungry?" he asked, standing. "I've got toast and peanut butter. Not fancy, but it's warm." She hesitated, then nodded. Ethan moved to a small kitchenette in the back, preparing a simple breakfast. When he returned, Sophie sat up cautiously, accepting the plate. She ate slowly, her eyes flicking to the garage door as if expecting someone to burst in. Ethan took a deep breath. "All right, kid, I need to know where you live. Someone's got to be looking for you." Sophie froze mid-bite, her hands trembling. Her gaze dropped, and she shook her head. "You don't remember, or you don't want to go back?" Ethan pressed gently. She swallowed hard, avoiding his eyes. "Mommy's gone," she whispered. Ethan's chest tightened. Gone could mean anything: missing, deceased, or just absent. He leaned forward, keeping his voice calm. "What about your dad?" Her lips pressed into a thin line, and she shook her head again. Ethan exhaled, weighing his options. He wasn't equipped to care for a child, but sending her back to the streets wasn't an option. He needed help, which meant calling the police. Before he could act, the sharp screech of tires outside startled them both. Ethan turned as a sleek black sedan pulled up, its polished exterior gleaming in the faint morning light. His instincts sharpened. The driver's door opened, and a woman stepped out in a tailored dark coat and heels, moving with precise authority. Her platinum blonde hair was tightly pinned, and her icy blue eyes scanned the scene with practiced efficiency. Sophie stiffened beside him. "Sophie." The woman's voice was sharp, urgent. Ethan glanced between the child and the woman, noting the unmistakable resemblance. "Claire Vanderbilt," the woman said. Her tone clipped as she fixed her gaze on Ethan. "I believe you have my daughter." Ethan crossed his arms, his stance subtly defensive. "And you are?" The woman's expression barely shifted, though impatience flashed in her eyes. "Her mother." Ethan felt Sophie shrink beside him, a movement that spoke louder than words. Something was off. This wasn't just a simple reunion. She was out in the cold, alone. Ethan said, his voice firm but even. Care to explain how that happened? Claire's jaw tightened, her eyes narrowing. That's not your concern. Now, please, return my daughter. She's scared, Ethan cut in. And she's not talking much. Maybe you should consider why. For a moment, something flickered in Claire's face, a crack in her polished facade. But it vanished quickly. She stepped forward, extending a hand to Sophie. Come, Sophie. We're going home. The girl didn't move. Ethan felt a protective instinct stir within him. He had no right to intervene, but Claire's demeanor unsettled him. You sure that's what she wants? He asked quietly. Claire's eyes snapped to his, sharp and cold. Excuse me. Ethan gestured toward Sophie. Maybe ask her first. Silence stretched, tense and heavy. Finally, Claire knelt, her heels clicking softly on the concrete. Sophie, sweetheart, she said, her voice softer but still strained. Come with me. Sophie hesitated, clutching the blanket Ethan had given her. I'll keep her safe, Claire added, glancing at Ethan as if sensing his resistance. Ethan studied her. There was something guarded in her posture, but beneath it, a hint of desperation. After a long pause, Sophie slowly moved toward her mother. Claire took her hand, standing with regained composure. Thank you for keeping her safe, she said, the words sounding more dutiful than heartfelt. She led Sophie to the car, and Ethan watched them go, an unease settling in his chest. He should have felt relieved, but something about this didn't sit right. As the car drove off, the garage felt colder, and Ethan had a sinking feeling this wasn't the last he'd see of Claire Vanderbilt. The days after Sophie left were strangely empty. Ethan told himself it shouldn't matter. She wasn't his responsibility. He'd done his part, kept her safe, fed her, ensured she returned home. Yet the image of her curled under his blanket haunted him. Business continued. Customers came for oil changes or engine repairs, but Ethan was distracted, checking local news for any mention of Sophie Vanderbilt. There was nothing, as if that night had never happened. Still, he couldn't shake the sense that something was wrong. Then, one quiet afternoon, the hum of an expensive engine pulled him from under a car hood. Wiping his hands, he stepped outside, frowning at the familiar black sedan parked nearby. Claire Vanderbilt emerged, as impeccably dressed as before, her heels clicking against the pavement. But something was different. Her icy confidence seemed slightly softened, her expression less impenetrable. Ethan exhaled, not entirely surprised. Didn't think I'd see you here. I didn't plan to come, Claire replied, pausing a few feet away. Her eyes briefly scanned the garage before meeting his. But life has a way of taking us to unexpected places. Ethan gave a dry chuckle. That's so? Don't seem like the type to believe in fate. A faint twitch of her lips hinted at amusement, but it faded quickly. She straightened, her voice measured. I came to thank you. Ethan raised an eyebrow. For what? For looking after my daughter. Her tone was controlled, but sincerity lingered beneath it. She hasn't stopped talking about you. Ethan glanced away, rubbing his neck. She okay? She's adjusting, Claire said, choosing her words carefully. But she hasn't been the same since that night. She keeps mentioning you, this place. Ethan frowned. That a problem? Claire sighed, her lips pursing. I don't know. I think she feels safe with you. Ethan studied her, catching the vulnerability she likely didn't mean to show. So, what do you want from me? He asked neutrally. She hesitated, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. Would you be willing to see her again? Ethan blinked, caught off guard. You serious? I wouldn't be here if I weren't. Ethan exhaled, weighing his options. He wasn't sure what he was stepping into, but something about Sophie and Claire pulled at him. Finally, he nodded. All right, I'll see her. Claire exhaled, almost relieved. Good. She handed him a card with her number. Call me. We'll arrange something. Their fingers brushed briefly as he took it, their eyes meeting. For a moment, he saw beyond her polished exterior, a woman as lost as he was. She turned to leave, but paused at her car door. Ethan, she said without looking back, Sophie doesn't talk about her father. Never has. Ethan's brows furrowed. Why tell me that? Claire faced him, her gaze unreadable. Because she only talks about you. With that, she drove off, leaving Ethan with more questions than answers. The next evening, Ethan stared at Claire's card, her number stark against the white background. He'd considered ignoring it, moving on, but the memory of Claire's parting words and Sophie's trust lingered. Beneath Claire's poised exterior was something fractured, a weariness that hinted at battles fought alone. He wondered what burdens she carried, what made a woman like her seem both untouchable and profoundly isolated. And Sophie, her small hand gripping his, had made it impossible to walk away. Ethan sighed, rubbing his jaw, and dialed the number, half hoping for voicemail. Claire Vanderbilt. Her voice answered, crisp, but with a trace of tension. It's Ethan, he said, pausing. Thought I'd take you up on that offer. A brief silence, then, I'll send my driver. 7 o'clock tomorrow. Ethan frowned. I can drive myself. Another pause, then a soft sigh. Fine. I'll text you the address. The call ended abruptly, and Ethan shook his head. This woman was a puzzle. The next evening, Ethan drove through an upscale neighborhood, his battered truck out of place among luxury cars and manicured lawns. The grand estate at Claire's address nearly made him turn back. Stone columns, towering windows, a house that screamed wealth. Before he could reconsider, the door opened, and Sophie came running out. Ethan, she shouted, crashing into him with a hug. He steadied her, surprised by her grip. Hey, kid, he murmured, ruffling her hair. You doing okay? She nodded, but her eyes hinted at something else. Claire appeared in the doorway, watching them with a guarded expression. Dressed in a simple sweater and slacks, she looked less like a CEO and more like a mother, uncertain and searching. Come in, she said, stepping aside. Ethan followed, Sophie clutching his hand. The house was stunning, marble floors, chandeliers, but it felt cold, more like a showroom than a home. Claire led them to a sitting room with a crackling fireplace. Sophie plopped beside Ethan on the couch, gripping his sleeve. Thank you for coming, Claire said, settling across from them. Ethan shrugged. Didn't have much choice, did I? He nodded toward Sophie, who watched him expectantly. A flicker of amusement crossed Claire's face before she composed herself. She's been asking about you nonstop. I thought it best she see you. Ethan glanced at Sophie. That true, kid? She nodded eagerly. I missed you. His chest tightened. He hadn't expected to matter to a child, especially one from such a different world. Claire cleared her throat. I won't keep you long. I just wanted to understand. Ethan frowned. Understand what? She hesitated. Why she trusts you. Ethan looked at Sophie, now leaning against him, at ease. Sometimes it's not about understanding, he said. Sometimes people just click. Claire's gaze dropped, something unreadable in her expression. I don't know how to connect with her, she admitted softly. Ethan studied her. For all her power, Claire looked lost. Maybe stop trying so hard, he suggested gently. Her eyes met his, vulnerable in a way she likely didn't realize. She rubbed her temple, exhaustion evident. I never had a model for motherhood. Nannies, tutors, my parents were never there. Ethan leaned back, absorbing her words. It explained her control, her need to manage everything. You don't need to be perfect, he said. Just show up. Claire gave a mirthless laugh. What if I don't know how? Ethan shrugged. Then learn. Silence settled, not tense but fragile. Sophie, unaware of the moment's weight, nestled closer to Ethan, her trust a quiet contrast to Claire's struggle. Ethan wasn't sure what he'd gotten into, but this was just the beginning. Over the following days, Ethan found himself stepping into an unexpected role, a steady presence in Sophie's life. It began with short visits, arranged through Claire's curt calls. At first, the meetings felt formal, almost like supervised custody exchanges. But gradually, something shifted. Sophie's joy at seeing Ethan became undeniable. She'd race down the estate's grand staircase, shrieking with delight, and launch into his arms. She'd babble about her day, her favorite books, or her latest garden escapades. Her laughter, once rare in the sterile Vanderbilt estate, began to echo through its halls. Claire watched from the sidelines, often lingering in doorways as Ethan and Sophie played games, shared stories, or wandered the sprawling garden. She rarely joined in, her presence heavy with unspoken questions, as if trying to decipher a language only they spoke. One afternoon, after a lively hide-and-seek game left Sophie giggling, Claire spoke up. I don't get it. Ethan, leaning against a garden bench, raised an eyebrow. Get what? She's different with you, Claire admitted, arms crossed tightly. She's happier. Ethan shrugged. Maybe 'cause I don't treat her like a schedule. Claire's face hardened. I don't. You do. Ethan interrupted softly. You manage her life like your business. Kids need time, patience, trust. Her jaw clenched, but she didn't argue. She glanced at Sophie, balancing on a fountain's edge like a tightrope walker. For a moment, Claire's posture softened. I never learned how, she confessed quietly. Ethan studied her. Then start now. Her eyes met his, hesitant, torn between wanting to connect and years of walls built high. Days later, Claire called, her voice lighter. She wants to see your garage. Ethan chuckled. My garage? Yes, Claire said, almost amused. She thinks it's magical. He smirked. Guess I'd better tidy up for royalty. When they arrived, Sophie bounded out, marveling at tools, car parts, and the old radio playing rock. She ran her fingers over wrenches and inspected a greasy engine block. You fix things, she said, looking up at Ethan. Like you fixed me. Ethan froze, her words hitting hard. Claire, too, seemed stunned, her lips parting. Clearing his throat, Ethan knelt beside Sophie. You weren't broken, kid. Just lost. Claire's fingers tightened on her sweater, her gaze shifting. Something clicked within her, an ache she'd ignored too long. Could connection be this simple? Her eyes lingered on Ethan, a realization dawning, unvoiced but present. In that moment, Ethan knew this wasn't just about Sophie. Claire was changing, and so was he. The weeks brought an unexpected rhythm. What began as duty, Ethan filling a role Claire allowed, became natural, undeniable. Sophie found safety in Ethan's presence, and Claire, though she might not admit it, found something new, belonging. Ethan, who'd avoided ties, grew accustomed to their world. Sophie's laughter softening the estate's edges, Claire's rare, unguarded moments. Even the unease of navigating spaces not his own. He wasn't sure he belonged, but for the first time, he wasn't sure he didn't. Yet peace was fleeting. One evening, as Ethan locked up his garage, tires screeched outside. A sleek black car idled, its headlights casting long shadows. Ethan tensed, recognizing the kind of vehicle tied to power and privilege. A man stepped out, impeccably suited, radiating authority. Ethan didn't shrink. You Ethan Marshall? The man asked, his voice smooth, deliberate. Ethan studied him, noting the confident stance, the casual adjustment of cufflinks. Who's asking? Victor Sterling, the man replied, smirking. I represent influential interests who don't appreciate certain connections. Ethan's jaw tightened. Be specific. Sterling stepped closer, shoes clicking. No games. You know why I'm here. Claire Vanderbilt has much to lose. And you, he exhaled, smirking, don't fit her world. Ethan's fists clenched, but he stayed calm, his pulse pounding with anger, not fear. He'd met men like Sterling, those who thought wealth equaled control. That's so, Ethan said evenly. Sterling tilted his head. Claire's practical. She chooses with logic, not emotion. You think she'll pick you over her empire? He chuckled. Don't waste your time. Ethan's anger flared, but he held steady. He knew Claire's world had different rules, but she'd defied them before, letting him into Sophie's life. I think you should leave, Ethan said, voice low. Sterling's smirk didn't waver, but his eyes grew colder. Consider this a warning, Marshall. Walk away before it gets ugly. He returned to the car, which sped off, leaving a heavy thread in its wake. Ethan exhaled, his mind racing. This wasn't just about him. It was about Claire, Sophie. Sterling underestimated him. Ethan had fought odds his whole life, losing his father young, working multiple jobs to support his mother, rebuilding after betrayal. He'd never bowed to intimidation, and he wouldn't now. The next morning, he sat in his small apartment, staring at the floor. Sterling's warning was clear, but abandoning Claire and Sophie felt wrong. He'd fought unseen battles his whole life. This was just another. By midday, he drove to the estate, gripping the wheel tightly. The atmosphere felt off. Security waved him through without a glance, unusual for Claire's world. She stood outside, arms crossed, expression unreadable. You shouldn't be here, she said, her voice lacking warmth. Ethan stepped out of his truck. We need to talk. Her lips pressed together, a flicker of fear in her eyes. She led him inside to the sitting room. Did Sterling visit you? Ethan nodded. Last night. Told me to back off. She exhaled slowly. You should. Ethan's jaw tightened. Is that what you want? Silence stretched. Claire's gaze wavered, then hardened. It's what's best. For who? For Sophie. You me. She said, conviction faltering. You don't understand, Ethan. These people don't just threaten. They act. I can handle myself. She laughed bitterly. That's not the point. They don't just ruin lives. They erase them. Their power isn't just money. It's influence, connections. She shook her head. I can't let you be their target. Ethan stepped closer, voice softer. What about Sophie? You think cutting me out is best for her? Her breath caught, but she straightened. She'll adapt. Ethan's chest twisted. You don't believe that. Her silence confirmed it. For the first time, he saw her fear, not just for herself, but for him. It gutted him. He could fight for them, but not if she wouldn't let him. All right, he said gruffly. If that's what you want. She flinched, but didn't stop him as he moved to leave. At the door, Sophie's voice called from the staircase. Ethan. He looked up, forcing a smile. Hey, kid. Are you leaving? His throat tightened. Yes, sweetheart, I am. Why? Ethan glanced at Claire, waiting for her to speak. She stood frozen, hands gripping her arms. So Ethan lied. Got some things to take care of. But I'll see you around, okay? Sophie nodded, unconvinced. Ethan gave her one last look before stepping out, the doors closing, echoing heavily. Ethan's absence cast a shadow over the Vanderbilt estate, lingering in its silent corridors. Claire told herself she'd done the right thing, protecting him from her world's dangers, but the reasoning felt hollow. The estate's pristine order felt disrupted, as if something vital was missing. She found herself listening for his truck's rumble, expecting Sophie's joyful squeals, but only silence greeted her. Sophie stopped asking about him after a few days, but her quiet sadness was unmistakable, a feeling Claire knew too well. She'd protected Ethan, ensured he wouldn't be a target, but the justification grew weaker with each passing day. Then came the board meeting, routine in schedule, but not an outcome. Claire walked in expecting familiar power plays, but was met with cold stares and guarded words. Victor Sterling sat at the table's head, his smirk barely hidden. "Claire, you've been working too hard. Perhaps it's time to step back." The ground shifted beneath her. "What is this?" Sterling steepled his fingers. "A transition. Investors are concerned about your distractions." Her pulse raced. "Distractions?" His smirk deepened. "Your associations, your failure to uphold the company's image. You've shown weakness, Claire, and weakness has consequences." Betrayal burned, but she kept her composure. They'd planned this, and she'd been blind. "You can't do this." Sterling slid a folder across the table. "Unless you prefer a scandal, especially one involving your daughter's welfare." Ice ran through her veins. "You wouldn't." His smirk widened. "Wouldn't I?" Claire forced herself to breathe. They'd stripped her power, and now they'd deliver the final blow. This wasn't a game anymore. It was war. Leaving the building, the weight of her loss settled on her shoulders. She'd lost her company, her power, her security, and she'd done it alone. That night, in her too large, too empty mansion, Claire stood alone. The chandelier's glow felt harsh, the silence oppressive. She gripped the marble countertop, her chest tight. For the first time, she had no plan, no control. She was utterly alone. Then, she did something rare. She picked up the phone and dialed. It rang twice before he answered. "Ethan." Silence stretched, heavy with unsaid words. His breath caught, her voice cutting through his defenses. For a moment, he was torn. Protect himself or go to her. Then she spoke, soft and raw. "I need you." His heart pounded. Hesitation gripped him. Hadn't he walked away? But her vulnerability undid him. "Where are you?" "Home," she whispered. "I'm on my way." The drive was a blur. Claire opened the door, not in her usual polished attire but a loose sweater, her hair loose, exhaustion etched in her face. The house felt heavy with her loss. "What happened?" Ethan asked, voice steady. She laughed hollowly. "I lost everything." Her voice was a whisper, her fists clenched but weak. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Sterling." She nodded. "They turned on me, took the company, threatened Sophie's future. I should have seen it." He studied her. "What do you need from me?" She swallowed. "I don't know." She laughed bitterly. "For once, I don't know." Ethan stepped closer. "You called me." Her eyes met his. "Because you're the only one I trust." His chest tightened. Trust? He hadn't expected that. "You don't have to do this alone," he said softly. She shook her head. "I don't know any other way." He exhaled. "Then learn." Silence hung between them. Then Claire stepped forward, leaning against him, her body trembling. Ethan froze, startled by her vulnerability. His instinct was to pull back, but he stayed, letting her lean into him. His hands hesitated, then rested on her back, firm and grounding. They stood like that, her shallow breaths steadying against him. Finally, she pulled back, clearing her throat. "Sophie's upstairs. She doesn't know yet." Her voice faltered. "I don't know how to tell her. She loves this life, this home. What if she blames me?" Ethan nodded. "We'll figure it out together." A faint smile crossed her lips. "Together?" He met her gaze. "Yeah, together." Morning light spilled through the estate's windows, but the grandeur felt hollow. Ethan had slept on the couch, barely resting, his mind replaying the past months. He'd walked away, thinking it was right, only to return, drawn by something deeper. Claire hadn't retreated as he'd expected. She'd sat beside him by the fireplace, silent but present. A soft knock broke the quiet. Sophie peeked from the staircase, hesitant. "Mom." Claire straightened. Good morning, sweetheart. Sophie's eyes flicked between them, settling on Claire. Are we leaving? Claire's shoulders stiffened. She knelt, opening her arms. Sophie ran into them, burying her face in her mother's shoulder. Claire held her tightly, trembling but refusing tears, whispering reassurances. Sophie clung back, her small hands gripping Claire's sweater. Yes, baby, Claire murmured. We have to go. Sophie sniffled but didn't argue, as if she'd sensed this moment coming. Ethan exhaled. I'll help pack. The day passed in quiet grief. Claire packed essentials, leaving behind the life she'd built. Loyal staff offered silent goodbyes, their eyes uncertain. The Vanderbilt name held weight, but without the empire, Claire was no longer their leader. At the doorway, she looked up at the house, memories swirling, her ambitious first steps inside, late nights in her office, Sophie playing in the garden. With a slow exhale, she let the illusion go. It's just a house, Ethan said quietly beside her. She breathed out. It was more. He nodded. Maybe, but it never made you happy. She searched his face, then admitted, no, it didn't. They left without looking back. The small rental home Claire secured was modest but warm. As Ethan carried in the last box, Claire stood in the living room, eyeing the bare walls. Not a palace, he said, setting the box down. She smiled faintly. Maybe that's good. Sophie's laughter rang from another room, the first genuine joy in days. They followed the sound, finding her surrounded by crayons, holding up a lopsided drawing of a house with 3 stick figures. Our new home, she declared. Claire knelt, brushing Sophie's curls, her voice thick. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Ethan crouched, tapping the drawing. Who's this strong guy? Sophie beamed. You. You said you'd help, right? Ethan smiled, something settling inside him. Yeah, kid, I did. Claire's gaze softened. What now? Ethan asked. She met his eyes. I rebuild. From scratch. He nodded. Not alone. She studied him. You sure? He smirked. I don't say what I don't mean. Claire reached out, her hand curling around his. Doubt flickered. Was she risking too much? But his warmth grounded her. Stay, she said softly. He squeezed her hand. Yeah, I'm staying. The first morning in the new home was chaotic. The coffee maker died, the shower rattled, and Sophie spilled cereal across the kitchen floor. But Claire laughed, a free, unburdened sound. For years, laughter had been a performance. Now, in this cramped kitchen, it was real. Ethan leaned against the counter, smirking. Didn't peg you for chaos. She scooped up Sophie, kissing her temple. It's different when it's yours. And it was. This simple life felt authentic. The estate had power, but not warmth. Now, with Sophie's giggles filling the air, Claire felt at home. Weeks passed meaningfully. Claire drove Sophie to school herself, learned to cook, despite Ethan's teasing, and began rebuilding. Not a cold empire, but something worthwhile. Ethan stayed, finding work at a local shop, but spending most time with them. He'd never wanted roots, but with Claire and Sophie, staying felt like a choice, not a trap. One evening, on the porch, watching Sophie chase fireflies, Claire turned to Ethan. The warm air carried jasmine, the fireflies glowing like lanterns. I never thanked you, she said. He raised an eyebrow. For what? She smiled. For not letting me push you away. For staying. He exhaled. Wasn't letting you go that easy, Vanderbilt. She laughed lightly. Just Claire now. He looked at her, her eyes soft, open. He took her hand. Just us now. She squeezed back. Yeah, just us. As Sophie ran up, breathless, Ethan knew this was home. Not a place, but the love they'd built. We'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? What part of this story touched you most? Share in the comments. We read every one. If you loved this journey of love, redemption, and finding home, Like this video and subscribe so you don't miss another heartfelt story. Your support means everything and helps us share more meaningful content. Thank you for joining this story. Until next time, take care, cherish those who matter, and remember, home isn't just a place. It's the love we create.